Back at it again. It's another edition of the State of Football, your new home for real football talk in the mornings, part 59 edition here on October 22nd, 2020. I am your co-host, RIC, and a place to be, Ric Serritella, telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and everything football. Who's covering more hot topics than myself, along with my co-host, John Murphy, down there in New Orleans. Good morning, John. Of course, Vice President, Director of Player Personnel for the Toronto Argonauts. I'm doing very well, but we do have some sad news to share here this morning. One of the true pioneers, we don't like to use that word too often, but a true pioneer in terms of what we're doing, and one of the reasons why we're sitting here today, literally paving the road for us. Dave T. Thomas loses his battle with cancer and passes away. I believe he died yesterday. I saw the announcement from Scott Wright from NFL Draft Countdown, who we always bump into at the Senior Bowl there. But Dave T. Thomas, really a legend in the NFL draft industry. And I go back, for me, it was like going back to the 90s. I was a big fan of Chet Kopic at the time, another pioneer, right? Because you think about before Mike and the Mad Dog were even on TV, Chet Kopic was doing the same concept maybe 10, 15 years earlier. And one of his regulars was Dave T. Thomas. And man, I used to get so excited when Dave T. would come on and spew his draft knowledge. And, he worked for so many different media outlets and NFL teams and the NFL behind the scenes. I did not have a personal relationship like you did, John, but what he did for individuals like you and me and kind of paving the way for us cannot be denied. So Dave T. Thomas, we lose a legend in the industry here on the State of Football.
Yeah, what I always liked is, kind of if you had one scale or the other, right? You had Joel Bushbaum, and if you got a handshake and a smile, and a very kind of quiet demeanor, type person, not overly outgoing, but if you got him talking on subjects that he liked, you could get him on a roll. And then you saw Dave T. and Mel Kiper, right? And you got very different, personality, and you got very different types of people. And then somebody who added kind of his own, kind of shtick, to how he did things, right? He was wearing sunglasses. It didn't matter kind of where, he would be abrasive, at times, but it was kind of more abrasive in his way, not abrasive like, to hurt anybody's feelings. He, just kind of had his ideas, and, if it wasn't a conversation or something he was interested in, he could be short, with one person and then long with a fan, or somebody that just came up to him and interacted with him. And that's, that's how it worked. That's how I was fortunate enough to meet him at the NFL draft when I was sitting up in the rafters as a fan. The other thing I really liked as time went on and getting to be around and see him at events and be in Radio Row, during draft years, as his daughter got older, she actually worked, with Dave. I'm saying it's Elisa Laura. Remember it's an L name, but I remember for 3 to 5 years there, when he had first gotten diagnosed. So understand, and I know this, I try to keep myself kind of in check emotionally for the moment. Dave T. Thomas was first diagnosed, from my memory, roughly 20 years ago. Right. So this was not a year or 2 year or 5 year. I'm going to say, and I hope there's others, that know him and media wise that might check in with us in the coming days and stuff. But I remember pretty well that this is a 20-year plus battle, which, I know, very well. My mom made 20 years, before succumbing to it. And this was a guy that, really just kind of fought through it. And you remember, this is where you can show you can do whatever you set your mind to. Dave T. Thomas was handing out his draft. I have a packet of him stapled his stuff and had somebody handing him out to the draft fans up in the rafters at the Marriott Marquis in New York, during one of the early drafts, probably late 90s, early 2000s, right? And he had them doing that, as part of a way for people to get his name to be recognizable, because the smart thing was, if you were recognizable amongst the draftniks, well, then all the media people, all the radio stations, everybody wanted you on. Why? Because people were listening, calling in, and it made it seem like he was very popular. That's how he grew his popularity. Like I said, when he got sick, he had his daughter with him all the time. She was kind of promoting all the events, getting him on the air, and kind of helping him around. So that was something I got to see, behind the scenes. And then, like I said, very well that, he's had a couple of battles, where, he wasn't able to fully, do things. So I was able to work with him, one time on the NFL draft bios that they used to give out live at the draft. So, really good person, in terms of, was always willing to give an ear, to somebody that was trying to work their way into business, and a one of a kind, right? You mentioned it. I think Pioneer fits accurately for somebody like this, because not only did he do his thing, he kind of did his thing his own way. If again, we always kind of throw it back to the youngins to go do this. You want to go Google Dave T, go, do it. But, not only check out all the different scouting services and all the years he covered a draft, do yourself a favor, try to find some video, or audio of Dave T. Thomas going on a rant, or, showing up with his sunglasses to do an interview. It'd be something to behold and see. And so we reach out to him and his family and wish him the best and thank them for sharing, Dave T. Thomas with the NFL community for such a long time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, listen, anybody out there who's watching right now, if you're connected to Dave T, if you're a family member, a friend, and definitely contact us. We'd love to get somebody on here to talk more about the passing of Dave T. Thomas, and somebody who's had a heavy influence on, what the NFL Draft Bible does here today. I mean, listen, that's kind of how me and John met, was, handing out our draft information and taking me on that throwback, listening to you talk, John, and how much the draft has changed from covering it and attending it and being able to interact with the fans and being out there, in the mix, hamming it up. Those days are long gone. And I think, they stopped handing out those printout books a few years ago now, because I really enjoyed getting those when you walk through the door and boom, here's a couple of encyclopedias for you. And so, those days are gone, and Dave T. Thomas is now gone. And, you mentioned Joel Bucksbaum and Dave T. Thomas, again, guys, along with, individuals like Howard Balzer, who really have paved the way for a Mel Kiper and a Mike Mayock and individuals like John Murphy and Ric Serritella. So, I was doing a little Google here this morning, just seeing, what might pop up. And I came across an article here. I think it was the Chris Chambers and Josh Heupel draft. And I was reading a Q&A with Dave T. Thomas. And then, the promotional link had, hey, you can order his NFL draft guide on CD-ROM. Get the CD-ROM. So big loss here in the football community, especially in the NFL draft community. So again, anybody out there that will that knows Dave T, please feel free to reach out. We got a couple good guests lined up here today. Our first one up is coming up in a little while. Before we get into it, John, we should also announce, did Mario Henderson pass away?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
35, wow. Only 35 years old. It doesn't seem like it's COVID related. It just said, due to health issues, and the Raiders put it out late last night. Yeah.
Wow. I did not see that. So Mario Henderson, at the age of 35, another loss here in 2020. Well, hey, we're talking hot topics. We're talking NFL. And who better to do that now to welcome in our first guest here on the State of Football. He is Josh Alper of ProFootballTalk.com. We welcome him in. Good morning, Josh. How are you today?
Very well. Good morning, guys.
Hey, appreciate you taking some time here because, I think just about anybody in the football business reads Pro Football Talk pretty religiously. You guys are on top of things and covering it. So great to put a face to the name, Josh. You've been doing some great work over there. And before we dive into some hot topics, I mean, I would guess that 90% of our listening audience would say, hey, that's a pretty cool job that I would love to have. So take us behind the scenes working at a Pro Football Talk and what your day is like.
It is a nonstop day. I feel like I'd say it in season, but it's really 12 months a year. Especially this year, we didn't even get that July break from without OTAs and training camp because of the COVID stuff and everything else. But yeah, no, we've got a good group and have been around and for a long time now. Been working together with Mike Florio, Michael David Smith, Shireen Williams. And just a ton of back and forth with NBC and everything else. I've been with Mike and since before NBC when it was a totally independent site. And I mean, geez, my son's 12 years old, and I've been working with Mike since before he was born, which I can't even begin to imagine at this point. But yeah, it's great. It is really nonstop, and it really is. It just whether it's keeping up with people around the league, keeping up with what's going on, with ESPN and NFL Network and the stuff they're breaking, and you never know when the next big thing is going to happen. I mean, I've run home from the gym in the middle of a workout because Tim Tebow got traded. I've pulled off the side of the road and written posts on my phone. It really is a nonstop 24-hour thing, the NFL now. And I there are times where I feel like I'd want it to stop, but better than the alternative of working for a living.
Yeah, no, and I believe it because I mean you guys are on top of things. As soon as news breaks, you guys have a story and an opinion on it. So kudos to you and your staff over there. So let's pick your brain a little bit because you are well tapped, well connected, and have your finger on the pulse. I'll start off with this. How about the lay of the land? The NFL power rankings, right? It seems like every week there's teams rising and sliding, and everybody had the Packers pegged as this dynamic team, and then here comes Tampa Bay and just kind of beats them down. Of course, the AFC I think is pretty wide open with the Chiefs and the Titans. I think are the two teams that stand out there. But you mentioned it, in this COVID world, anything can happen, and there's a lot to go. So early indications here. Who are kind of at the top of the pecking order for you?
Well, I think you nailed those teams. I would say that the Steelers have been one that I think have to be right up there. And obviously Steelers Titans this weekend is going to be a real sort of set the stage, I think, sort of coming into the second half of the regular season. Who's going to be there with the Chiefs and the Titans are a little bit more battle tested, at least this version of them, because we're still getting used to the Chase Claypool and Big Ben being back with the Steelers. And that defense, though, that kept the Steelers alive with that awful quarterback play last year has continued. And you see them right there. If they can be the team that can slow down Derrick Henry, and then can they also do it to Patrick Mahomes? That's, I think, a huge question with the Steelers. And then NFC, I think the Seahawks, for me, the big question is if the Seahawks run into a team that can keep them from scoring 30, 35 points, can they win a game? Because that defense has been so bad at this point. And is it a question of the defense is bad because they have to be on the field so much because the offense just flies down the field and scores? And something I think we saw with the Chiefs a little bit in the first half of last season, and things got better and better as the year went on. Are the Seahawks on that kind of a trajectory? Or is it going to be the Buccaneers coming together, this new team that Tom Brady and Gronk and everybody else, we saw last week how good they can be. 10 weeks from now, how good is that offense going to be with all of those pieces, coming together? So, I think those are the things for me that I'm really watching, along with, you said the Packers. Are the Packers, are the Bears going to be for real? Is this a real thing, or is that offense going to wind up, sticking a fork in them at some point? That I would lean towards that side of it, but you never know. These teams, there's still so much football left to be played, so many injuries. Who knows who's going to make a big trade? There's, the next couple of weeks are going to be very big in setting that stage for who's going to be there in the end.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the last time the Bears were in the big dance, Sexy Rexy, I think Rex Grossman took them there. So we're talking to Josh Alper, NBC Sports, ProFootballTalk.com, along with Ric Serritella and John Murphy here. You know, you mentioned the Seahawks and the Buccaneers. The one image to me that stood out during that Packers win is when they panned over to the sideline. You saw Gronk, Brady, and the center from New England, I think Stevens. But you just basically, that picture told me here, and they were yucking it up a little bit, right? They were up by 4 touchdowns, but that image was like, hey, we're going to show you how to win. Follow us, hop on board. And I think that's a team that's going to continue to mature here. But you mentioned the Seahawks, and I want to ask you, with this whole Antonio Brown situation, do you think Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, or both will be suited up for the Seahawks by the end of the season?
It's a good question. I would think that if I were making that choice, I would be leaning more towards Josh Gordon, because I just think Antonio Brown, I don't trust that he's going to come in there and be the guy who can. I'll compare it to Le'Veon Bell and what we heard from Le'Veon Bell yesterday about coming to Kansas City and understanding that there are other weapons and understanding that this is the spot for him to rehabilitate his image. I don't know that Antonio Brown sees things that way. I think that you're going into a team that has DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I don't think you need someone to soak up targets. I don't think you need someone who's going to say, hey, look at me. I'm open. I'm open. I'm open. I would prefer a Josh Gordon, a guy who needs to show that he can play a full season. And obviously he's not going to do that this year, but can play a role on a team and can stay in the league and do something, versus Antonio Brown, who I just think obviously is a dynamic player when last we saw him. But I have bigger doubts. My feeling is that for all the chatter about it right now, the Seahawks have had months of time to bring in Antonio Brown, do something with him. They've chosen not to. The offense is not the issue there. I think probably I would say Josh Gordon's a little bit likelier, but I don't know that either one of them winds up there.
Interesting stuff. I know a couple teams tried to poach Snacks Harrison too off the practice squad there, and Snacks said, no, I'm going to sit tight and wait for the playoffs run. Josh Alper, NBC Sports, Ric Serritella, John Murphy. Go ahead, John.
Hey, Josh, how's everything going?
Great.
So you almost took us right to where I wanted to go, which is, I mean, no one's going to really get excited, or the needle's not going to get moved in the NFL if the Jets trade a linebacker, to somebody. Do you see a trade? Like, teams have been moving some money around, and, everybody always gets more excited about NFL trade deadline. And normally, it kind of ends with not a whole lot of real action. Do you see any of these teams that seem to be completely out of it dialing it up a notch and trading a Julio Jones, a Matt Ryan, a Sam Darnold? Do you see a real trade that will be back here in 2 weeks going, wow, I didn't see that coming?
I think there probably will be one. I don't know that it's even going to necessarily be one of those teams that does it. I think the Jets, you could probably trade for anyone on that roster. Whether you'd want to or not would depend on whether you've seen a Jets game this season or not. I think the Falcons, I think Matt Ryan, that's a very difficult move to make. I don't see a team that has that very, you could say the Cowboys, but really it is moving heaven and earth to get Matt Ryan for the rest of this season makes sense for a Cowboys team that could probably still win that division at 7-9 or 8-8, given the way things are shaping up. Last week was awful, but if they're going to be that bad, Matt Ryan's not going to save the day. Cincinnati is a team I think you should be looked at. They've really changed the roles of Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins. And I think Dunlap in particular, as a pass rusher, is a guy that can plug into just about any team, come off the edge and make a difference. Seattle could use a Carlos Dunlap very badly. Geno Atkins is another guy. He's obviously a veteran. If he's healthy and you're convinced, you feel he's healthy, Tampa Bay would have been a team with Vita Vea being out. That would have been a spot, but they just traded with Steve McClendon with the Jets. So maybe not. They did clear up some cap space, but I think Cincinnati, AJ Green is another guy that comes up a little bit. He says he doesn't want to move. I would be a little bit warier of him just because of how hurt he's been for the last few years, that he's going to come in and make a difference. But those are guys where clearly clearly Cincinnati's turning the page to the Joe Burrow era. It's going to be younger, newer, fresher guys. And so those guys would be high on the list of people I'd watch in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, some good names there to keep an eye on. Curtis Samuel's a guy I think that kind of pops up because he wasn't there with the current regime. I want to pick your brain about Tua, though, because here's a team in the Dolphins that really they've done a great job kind of rebuilding while they compete. And usually it's like when a team has to tear it all down and reconstruct it, it takes some time. This guy Flores comes in, you saw it, even though the record might not have been outstanding last year. This was a team who competed. They were in almost every game. Now they come, and here they are kind of teetering the line at 500, where, they come into their bye week, and Fitzpatrick's done great. I think they just see the upside in Tua, but suddenly, the Bills look like there's some kinks in that armor. The Patriots obviously are fluttering. I mean, what are your expectations here for Tua? Because I don't see a team that's necessarily rebuilding. I see a team that may have a shot to even take this division.
Yeah, I think that the Tua move, it is surprising on the surface because they've been playing well. They're coming off 2 blowout wins in a row. You haven't had the bad Fitzpatrick yet. It's coming. It always comes, but they haven't had it yet. And I think that if that bye week had stayed at week 10 or week 11 where it was originally scheduled, and obviously that Broncos-Patriots game got moved and all the AFC teams had to shuffle around a little bit, and you have it earlier now. And I think that 2-week period to acclimate to a new quarterback was always something to look at as the spot to make the move. You chose to do it now, and I think some of that strength that Preston Williams and Devontae Parker and Gesicki and Shaheen, like they have a lot of guys who are playing well right now. They have the offense sort of where they want it. Myles Gaskin has run better. I mean, their running game is far improved from where it was last year. Offensive line is far improved. That you're putting him in a position to succeed with that supporting cast and maybe not putting everything on his shoulders in the way that Cincinnati's had to do with Joe Burrow and the Chargers have had to do with Justin Herbert. And both those guys have done well. So I think that some of that plays a role in it. But I think the expectation has to be that you're going to keep winning. This can't be a thing where you're 3-3 and say, all right, we're going to be okay with going, 3-7 the rest of the way and missing the playoffs. That if you don't feel that he's ready to get you there at this point, it's way too early. I think that they think he can go in and win and do all the same kinds of things that Fitzpatrick is doing, perhaps without some of that riskier downside, because he's going to play more within himself at this point. I'm really interested to see how it all plays out. But I do get the move. I think it's a tough break for Fitzpatrick because, you saw it yesterday with him. He's really heartbroken about this, and as he should be. It's a tough draw, even if it's coming.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to manage to feed all those kids now, but you see Herbert, to your point, Herbert and Burrow playing extremely well, but it's not translating to W's, right? So that will be an interesting situation to monitor. Josh Alper here, NBC Sports, ProFootballTalk.com, along with Ric Serritella and John Murphy. Go ahead, John.
So, hey, Josh, one of the things I'm interested in seeing off the field in the next 2 weeks is, while the trade deadline might be really interesting to the everyday football fan, what will be really interesting is to see, once this election is over, depending on the results, how this shakeup goes, right? I think we're going to see a Monday Night Football game where they try to say as little as possible that there is an election within 24, 48 hours later. ESPN, I think, is going to try to be as neutral as humanly possible, not to create a stir, where every other time you've seen them interview either Barack Obama live, do a pre-tape or do something in the pregame prior to that. I believe with Trump and even Hillary, did something. But I think the politics of the politics is going to be something very interesting to see here in the final 2 weeks. Individuals, the teams, the league, and then the initial reaction to whatever happens and how open or closed all the media is with that. How do you see some of the guys and some of the things that we've seen, kind of come to light greater and greater in the past 12 months, whether it's the racial inequalities, politics, the players having a greater voice, and a freer voice than before. You're starting to see all that happen, but here we are with 2 weeks to go and a likelihood that we're going to air it out a little more and not just on the field.
Yeah, well, I think that the thing you've seen, and I think it's been true across all sports, and you've seen it with arenas and stadiums being turned into polling places, that the focus is so much on vote, not about which candidate, not about this or that. It's just vote for your person, get out there, vote, let your voice be heard. And I think that's the biggest thing with the players and that speak your mind, be free to speak your mind and say, obviously don't say hurtful and attacking things. Don't, demonize people. That's, I think, the thing that they've been very, very much trying to do is stay in the lane of saying, this is what I believe. It's not about what you believe. It's not about this. It's not about that. I want to vote for what I think. I'm going to vote and do that. And I think the fact that the teams have, the NFL's already said that, the trade deadline is the same day as election day. They've said, the facilities are closed. It's a Tuesday. It's not a real big work day for most teams anyway, unless you're playing on Thursday night. Some of that is a little bit of lip service, but it's this message that do everything you can to vote. Vote early, vote by mail, vote, get your vote in, let it be heard, and then let's move on, hopefully, to a place where, as a country, whatever happens, that we are all comfortable speaking our voices and hearing other people speak their voices, and let that continue, and let that continue to be a thing that drives it, that it's about the people. It's not about the people it's not about the ones at the top. It's about us who decide those people are going to be, and rein some of that back in and take more of it for ourselves rather than have everything be a reaction to what someone tweets or says.
Well, hey, keep preaching, Josh. I hope we can get back to a society that allows for that, because I am sick of logging in and seeing the venom spewed just because somebody has a different political view than you. It's like unbelievable. So we could probably do a whole show on that, right? But we won't. We know you've got a breaking news story that probably just came down the wire here, Josh. So we'll let you boogie on. Anything you got going on? Any care to predict the NFC least game of the week tonight before you go?
I would think the Giants can get it done tonight. The Eagles are so banged up that, yeah. Wentz, it's amazing how much of this has fallen back on Wentz, because he's the only thing keeping the Eagles in games. There are mistakes being made, but and he's certainly hurt them at times. But you watch the last couple of games. That game against the Ravens last week was just incredibly heroic effort. But I just don't think they have enough bullets in the gun to get it done tonight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. All the Eagles fans were in outrage when they took Jalen Hurts in the second round. Now they're all calling for Hurts to be inserted. So, we appreciate the time, Josh. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do this again down the road sometime. But, again,
absolutely
appreciate all the hard work that you and your staff do over there at ProFootballTalk.com.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
You too. Josh Alper, NBC Sports, ProFootballTalk.com. That man is very busy with all the content that they're putting up there on that website, and some great perspective from somebody who's been covering it for a long time. So great to get Josh Alper on the show. Make sure you follow all of his work there at the ProFootballTalk.com. Of course, you're logging into Pro Football Talk. Who's not? I know this next guy is Neil Stratton, Inside the League, who joins us every Thursday at 9:40 a.m. And he has some interesting topics for us to discuss, as always. Of course, creator of InsideTheLeague.com. He also publishes the SucceedInFootball.com blog. He's also an author. He's got 2 books, Moving the Chains, and also Scout Speak, which just came out about a month ago. You see a stash in the background there that we're giving away with your All Access Football, your All Access NFL Draft Bible subscription. So we thank Neil for that. Good morning, Neil. We appreciate you hopping back in here. How are you this morning?
Rick, good morning. Thank you for the product placement, buddy. The check's in the mail, and I appreciate you guys both having me on. Good morning, John. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
The most important question of the week is, how's the recruiting trip going?
It went well, and I'm sorry that I was in and out last week. The signal was not so strong, but I promise I'm in one place right now, and we're good. My son had a good, productive conversation. We'll see where it goes.
No doubt. Well, hey, I got your email on Friday, the Friday wrap. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you get on the mailing list there. And you broke down some interesting trends from an ownership point of view, from a general manager point of view. And I think we mentioned it here on the show last week. Like, hey, you look around the league, some of the GMs that are in that seat right now, they probably wouldn't be qualified 15, 20 years ago. But we've seen kind of this whole evolution in the NFL, especially in the front offices.
Well, there are certain criteria, and I think that teams look for when they go to fill that seat. And we looked 2 weeks ago, we kind of looked at what they are looking for in the modern game. Typically, they want someone younger than 50, preferably younger than 45. Typically, they want someone who has a scouting background, who's been on the road, who's actually been an area scout, what we think of when we think of scout. Very often, they want someone with New England in their background. And we didn't really focus on that as much with the Friday wrap, but that's something we found in the past. And then there are a number of other categories that they're kind of looking for. But those are your three, I think, that they really want. They want someone who's got some skins on the wall, who's got a bit of a reputation. They got of a certain age. And they also kind of want someone who I think is someone that has actually gone and visited schools and been on the road and done all those kinds of things. And that's what we've seen. Now, we don't know. I mean, there could be, I don't know, as many as 6, 7 GM jobs that open up after the end of the season this year. We already have 2. And so will that trend hold? I don't know. It's still too early to tell. We're starting to see a lot more. Obviously, analytics is something that's become a lot more popular. And now the Cleveland Browns are actually stringing some wins together. They can start to point to analytics and say, hey, maybe we kind of had figured this out. Now, obviously, last week wasn't a good indication necessarily of what the Browns' success has been, but it's a constantly evolving thing. And then last week, as you know, Rick, we looked at the ownerships. Where are owners coming from? What are they looking for? And you have to kind of sort out their backgrounds and the records of the teams, how many winning seasons they had in the last 10 and all those kinds of things to really kind of discern objectively which teams are going to have openings. And so those are some of the things that we looked at last week. And I thought it was kind of interesting because there are a few teams that kind of showed up that you might not have expected that might have openings, but we'll see. We'll see if the trends bear out.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, we were just asking Josh Alper, do you see with the current situation where they're the haves and the have-nots, right? We all know who we think are contenders, and then there's a group that are clearly not doing anything right now. Do you expect that 2 weeks from now we'll be having this conversation and say, can you believe that guy got traded? And if so, who might that guy be that we're not focused on, that maybe we're not saying? Because I don't see, no one's going to get really excited if the Jets trade an inside linebacker to anybody. It's just someone else getting one of their guys that they're wholesaling off at, at the 99-cent store. But who is it? Is it can Matt Ryan get traded in the next 2 weeks? Can Julio Jones, get traded in the next 2 weeks? Is there anyone healthy enough in Philadelphia, to get traded? And do the Texans do anything minus Bill O'Brien and with them in search of their next people in charge? Do any of these teams that are not in it make a trade that we're all sitting there going, oh, I didn't see that one coming?
Well, I think there's been 3 players that have been in the headlines, and they're from the teams that have already made GM changes. The Falcons, as you alluded to, John, there have been rumors they may move Matt Ryan, they may move Julio Jones. The Texans, maybe a J.J. Watt. I think if there's going to be, of those 3, I think the easy one to say would be a defensive player would be J.J. Watt. And for a number of reasons, with Watt especially, we're talking about an older player who's in probably the 4th quarter of his career, could give you an instant impact. But, as you know, John, it's hard to drop a quarterback into a new offensive system, even a wide receiver into a new offensive system, and expect them to really make sparks quickly. I think you saw Emmanuel Sanders last year have some success in San Francisco, but it's not always the parts don't always fit. I mean, Sanders even has admitted this season he didn't even really know the Saints playbook until like week 3. He had the benefit of quote unquote a full training camp. I mean, under the code of situations and protocols is a little different, but again, I think it's really splashy to think that a team might pick up a major offensive cog, but that's difficult in football. It's not like baseball where you say, okay, go play center field and we'll see you in the 3-hole, when it's your turn to bat, and we expect you to hit some home runs. It's not like that. Football's a different animal. So I don't know that we're going to see the big headline-making trades. We could, but you're mostly going to see maybe a key special teamer or a defensive run stopper, maybe a specialist of some kind that might make a trade, but usually not a guy that's got to be on the offensive side where they've got to learn the coverages and the blocking systems and the terminology. And that really is something hard to learn on the fly.
Yeah, I think, the only place that I could see Matt Ryan actually working would be if there was truth to the Jimmy Garoppolo schism and Shanahan, wanted to bring in a better quarterback. That could work because, hey, plug and play. But man, JJ Watt, you talk about a guy like that getting moved potentially at the trade deadline. Holy smokes. That would be talk about a instant impact to inject into your team for a playoff run. That would be unbelievable. You know what's unbelievable, Neil? Shifting gears here a little bit. I know you get these same phone calls that John and myself are receiving from the agents and trying to get players, street free agents, into the building in this COVID era. It is a frustrating thing, and it's real. What have those conversations been like on your end?
Just yesterday, I was talking to an agent who's got some offensive linemen on the street right now. Typically, offensive linemen, man, if you've got an offensive lineman, as you approach the third, the last third of the season, you got gold, man, because everyone's looking for that. But with the expanded practice squads and the COVID protocols and all those kinds of things, if you got a guy on the street now, he's pretty much dead. I mean, we don't have the XFL, kind of down there at the end of the road. We don't have anything out there. There's a spring league, but they're pretty much, I think they've pretty much got their roster set. I think they go to camp next week. It's a very difficult landscape. And, that's the same thing that agents have been saying for a long time now, really all season. If you're a kid, there were no tryouts this year, limited undrafted free agent signings. Obviously camps were very different. If you didn't at least make a 90, then you're pretty much gone. And, it has just ravaged the 2020 draft class. I mean, for the rank and file fan, that's not a big deal. But for people like everyone who's on this call and probably most people that are listening to this call, it's been a very, very difficult year. The business community has been affected dramatically and not in a good way.
John?
So taking off of that, how do you see that possibly affecting when you have a large part of the agent business that doesn't make money off of a first contract? They make it off a second and third. Do you think there are some agents that are going to look at what's happening and what's happened and possibly pass on 2021?
Well, I think it's possible. It's just the difficulty with this industry is it's kind of like, sharks got to keep swimming. If you're not signing players, you don't have a chance to make any money. And unless you've got some nice veterans that are sitting there ready for a new deal, then it's going to be difficult to get paid. So then think about the backdrop of a decreasing cap. For the first time since I've been doing this, we're going to see a decrease in the cap. It could be a dramatic one given that, stadiums aren't full and what have you. So it is it's an incredibly tough time to be an agent. Tomorrow in the Friday wrap, you talked about that, alluded to that a little bit, Rick. We're going to be talking to a lot of the agents who thought they were going to be sitting for the exam in July. And as y'all know, when you become certified, you have 3 years to get a player on a 90-man roster. And if you don't, then you have to start over. You've got to pay the initiation fee. You've got to take the exam, all that hassle. We talked to several agents, and most of them, even with the 3-year rule, even if they didn't get a pass and they had to have someone on a 90-man by 2023, I guess it would be, or 24, I guess it would be, they're all in, man. They're ready to take the exam. They don't care, even though they probably wouldn't get their results until maybe Christmas, maybe even January. They're all in. They want to get going. The thing about this, guys, you can't look at the agent business in a rational sense. It's not like, being an architect or an engineer or even a salesman. It's an addiction. It's a way of life. It gets in your bloodstream. It's very hard to turn back once you get started. I always tell, people once they get started in this industry, I never see people walk out of the business. They only leave on their shields. I mean, everyone, it's usually divorce, litigation, termination from a real job, or all three, So it's a difficult landscape, but it's also one that is people are no less passionate about. And I don't see that changing even in these ridiculous, crazy times we're living in right now.
Yeah, here at the NFL Draft Bible, when they get certified, we say, hey, in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit. God bless you. It is a tough business for sure. Anything in the football industry is tough, but man, you've really got to be prepared, as Neil said, to not only take that hit financially, but then, be in a shark infested tank with, you're like a goldfish out there when you first get certified. So like to get your certification in January and try to sign a guy and get something going, it's going to be very tough, extremely difficult. And that is going to be for anybody trying to get newly certified. Of course, if you're taking that test, Neil Stratton has the NFL agent certification class that is available at InsideTheLeague.com. Of course, his newsletter is coming out tomorrow, the Friday Wrap. And you gave us a little sneak peek what's going on there. What else can people expect there tomorrow? And also what's coming up on the Succeed in Football blog. I really enjoyed the post recently about people that want to be a scout. And how to do that. So you're doing a lot of great interviews there with people that have worked in the business.
Well, Rick, back at you. Y'all doing scout school on Friday nights. And I know that a lot of people have gotten really excited about that. I'm excited about it. And the times you've allowed me to sit in, I've been incredibly impressed by that. We're doing something along the same lines called the fourth quarter. And here in the fourth quarter of the year, we've got 4 different former scouts and administrators who are going on Zoom calls. Last week, we had Danton Bartow, who used to be with the Rams. Anyone who knows Danton knows how entertaining he is. He pulls no punches. He's a man's man. He was great. He was a lot of fun. And so last week in Succeed in Football, I had 7 things I learned from Danton in the first 20 minutes of the call. Danton we asked him for an hour. He stayed on for an hour and a half. It was all gold. It was comedy. It was insights. It was, wow, I can't believe he said that kind of stuff. So tonight, we kind of go in a different direction. We got Doug Whaley on. Doug was, as you know, he's an interesting guy. He was the GM of the Bills. He came up in arguably one of the top 3 or 4 organizations in the NFL, the Steelers, most stable, know what they're doing, always successful, what have you. And then he was the commissioner of the XFL. And that was an incredibly, I'm sure, interesting time in his life as well. Doug's a gentleman. He's a great man. He's a great Christian. He's become a great friend. I'm sure when he sees me call now, he rolls his eyes because I'm always asking him, come and speak or come and be on this Zoom or whatever. But he's always a really good sport about it. Anyway, tonight we'll have Doug for about an hour and 20 minutes, and he'll talk about his experiences in the game. He'll talk about what he was looking for when he was looking to hire scouts. And then he'll also talk about his experiences in 2016. One of the little subtexts of our calls has been the 2016 draft. We're 5 years past it. But not just because we're 5 years past and we can kind of look at it objectively, but man, hey, listen, the Laramie Tunsil and a mask situation was like the JFK situation for the rest of the country. Where were you on 9/11? Forget about 9/11. Where were you when you saw Laramie Tunsil in a mask on a video minutes before the draft started, So we'll be asking Doug about that and what it was like in the Bills' war room when that happened. We'll talk about why Michael Thomas was the 5th wide receiver drafted and virtually every wide receiver drafted before him is out of the league. We'll talk about what they thought about Tyreek Hill. Here's a guy that won the 5th round that, you can make the argument he's the best wide receiver in the league. We can talk about Dak Prescott, who was a 4th rounder who may, had he not broken his ankle, was talking about being the highest paid quarterback in the league. Then you factor in that Carson Wentz was part of that draft versus, he was one of the top 2 quarterbacks. There's so many interesting angles to that draft, and it's so much fun to talk about. And so we'll be asking Doug about that and how the Bills broke down that draft and who were their top 5 players or top 10 in regards to position, and then everything else that was part of that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I have people on these calls and they always email me and say, "Hey man, that was a blast." I said, "Yeah, I know, wasn't it?" Enjoy it more than they do, I think, sometimes. So it's a lot of fun. It's my chance to I guess, talk to my inner fanboy, as well as kind of host these calls and help break down the business for people who are eager to learn.
No, it's a lot of fun. Doug Whaley, one of the best in the business. I had a chance to hop on the Blake Bedingfield and Bob Morris seminar that you did, and that was a lot of fun. Where was I? I remember the draft was in Chicago that year, and so they had the media in like the library downtown, and of course it was all volunteer staff, so nobody knew which way to send you or where to go or what credential was right. And so I'm running through a maze trying to get to my seat before the draft starts, and I'm running late. I'm sweating bullets over here, and I finally sit down. I flip open my laptop, and literally the first thing I see is the Laramie Tunsil video. I'm like, I'm like, wait, this has got to be doctored, right? This is like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And I can't believe it's 5 years ago. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Any other seminars? You got to let me know when these are coming up so we can help promote them on the NFL Draft Bible. Who else do you have lined up?
Next week we'll have Ahmad Russell, another real gentleman who was with the Colts back then. We'll talk to him about his experiences in the industry, what he's doing now, what he looked for when he was on the road, and we'll talk about 2016 from the Colts standpoint. And then in our week 4 of the series, which I guess is the first Thursday in November, we'll have Raleigh McKenzie. Raleigh isn't only a guy who had a lengthy NFL career and whose brother was a GM, but he was a scout in his own right. He's been with one of the most storied franchises in the league, the Raiders. And so we'll talk to him about evaluation. Raleigh was also part of our team that went out and did pro days across the country last year when, all that kind of collapsed, right when in the early stages of COVID. So he might have some really fun and interesting stories from that time in his life. And then again, we'll talk about his perspective on 2016 and what he saw and all the things that are part of that, crazy draft. So he'll be a lot of fun. It's just $9 a night. I mean, less than what it costs to go to the movies, about what it costs to go to McDonald's. You can come and be part of this and listen to these people talk and tell incredible war stories and ask your own questions. I mean, when people have questions, we bring them in on the chat and then we'll pose them straight there while our guest is there. And we've gotten some really interesting responses. Sometimes I'll ask a question that I think everyone's already got the answer to, and then I'm really surprised by it. So it's been a great learning experience. It's been really entertaining, and hopefully it's pretty affordable as well.
So if they want to jump on that seminar tonight, what's the best way, Neil?
Just go to my Twitter account. It's @InsideTheLeague. Our DMs are open. Just reach out to us. We'll send you a PayPal invoice, $9, no tax. Bing bang, you're in. We'll send you the link to tonight. Hopefully you guys can join us as well. Love to have you both. And off we go. And we'll talk for an hour plus. Sometimes we go an hour 5. Sometimes we go an hour 20. Sometimes we go an hour 45. It's happened before. It's just these guys love talking football, and I love listening to football. And so once you get on a roll, my wife's knocking on my office door and say, "Hey, you got dinner out here?" I'm like, "Shut up! I don't want to miss any of this." So it's it's a lot of fun and something that I look forward to personally, and I think a lot of other people do too.
Yeah, no, I had a chance to work with Raleigh McKenzie last year at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, and there's nobody who loves the game more. Talk about dinner. I've had a chance to talk football with them over a couple meals, and it's a blast, a whole lot of fun. So definitely worth the price of admission. John, anything else you got for Neil before we let him boogie?
Well, I think he now has set the record as the first guest ever to ask people out there to slide into his DMs.
Yeah, maybe I made a big mistake. I guess we're gonna find out. Huh?
It started here. The next chapter in the story. It started when I asked for random people to slide in my DMs, and that's where it all went downhill.
Hey, we're damn the torpedoes, right?
Well, hey Neil, we appreciate all the hard work and coverage that you provide, and of course, jumping on with us each and every Thursday here on the State of Football. We will definitely chat, my friend, sooner rather than later. I'm sure of that. So hey, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be on the lookout for all that great content that you produce at Inside the League.
Thanks, guys. Had a blast. Have a great weekend. See you tonight, maybe.
There you go. Neil Stratton doing great things there at InsideTheLeague.com. Succeed in football. Some great guests. Man, talk about bang for your buck. $9 get you access to folks that, quite frankly, John, I mean, if you're trying to work in this business, I mean, this is where you want to be.
Yeah, not only that, I think, it's something that we've seen, and Neil has always done a good job of it. And we've kind of taken that and spun it off to where the biggest thing you have to do when the waters get choppy is figure out a way to kind of keep your head above water until you can latch on to the next thing, right? And a lot of those guys, the main reason that he has so many guests, the reason he has the contacts that he has is not only the trust that he's built up with the information that he double and triple checks before putting out there. It's the factor that when that guy goes from being the GM or a scout or an agent or a player to needing the other side of the equation, hey, sometimes doing a video chat, sometimes doing an interview with somebody, sometimes being on a podcast, and whatever just kind of keeps, those guys' names active and afloat. And we're in an ever-changing business, like we've mentioned in the last couple of weeks when we've had Neil on as a guest. Sometimes your best idea, is the first thing that comes along that kind of keeps your name in the mix, keeps you knowing all the names and important information that's going on. Because just like he said with an agent, it's the same in any other part of this business. If you're a coach, if you're a scout, if you're a media member, if you miss one, class of free agents, you miss one draft class, it's hard to ever catch up. If you're a scout and you're out for one cycle, there's a lot of people that are out there fishing for these jobs. And, Neil does a really good job, whether it was using those guys, last year to do the pro days, which is why that was so successful, is because the names of the people, that were working it, or getting these guys, and sharing that weekly information about how to get a job, how to keep a job, what jobs are available, who's doing a good job at the jobs they have. Because you got to remember, these are the people that are normally in the league working with teams the longest, but who normally you never rarely hear who they are unless they ascend to the highest, rankings of their jobs. You normally don't hear, about that area scout by name. And Neil does a really good job of recognizing both the high-end people, but the guys that are the grinders out on the road. And I think that's what makes these events so appreciative throughout the football community.
Oh, no doubt about it. Neil Stratton, as respected as there is in the football industry. And here's a side note for you. If you're ever in Indianapolis during the NFL Scouting Combine, hit Neil up, find out how to get into his Combine seminar series. He's been doing it now. I think this will be the 12th year. I've been fortunate enough to be there for, the last 5 or 6 years, I believe. And every year the heavy hitters come out, whether it's Ray Farmer or Jeff Ireland. Chris Ballard was honored with, GM of the Year award. He brought the entire Colts scouting staff. I mean, John Lynch shows up. I mean, how many people around the league would go out of their way at the Combine to come attend and speak at an event? Just goes to show you how well respected Neil Stratton is. So if you're not a subscriber, get on it. InsideTheLeague.com, and of course, Succeed in Football, the free blog that he does. We'll be sure to promote and blast out those seminars that he's doing over on the NFL Draft Bible. And man, you blink on this show and another hour of power goes by, John. It's been a fun show in the books. I wasn't quite sure what we were going to talk about when we woke up this morning, but we figured it out. And we had a lot of great guests with Josh Alper and Neil Stratton talking about the loss of Dave T. Thomas at the top of the show. Of course, Mario Henderson, will find out what happened there, but the floor is yours, my man, however you want to put a ribbon on it.
Well, so something that'll come out later on today that we just found out, and it spins off of the conversation that we were just having with Neil about having so many players and agents having issues getting to the facility, because now you're talking about at least 5 days of passing your test. Then they get you to work out. Then you have the COVID rules before. So, hey, some of the reasons why these trades may or may not happen is it's going to take 5 to 7 days just to get somebody, into your building, let alone practicing and onto the field. So one of the exciting things that we know is upcoming is Hub Football is hosting another NFL free agent workout in November. You can find out all the information about it on hubfootball.com. But right there, Ty Detmer, former NFL quarterback Ty Detmer, will be announced today as one of their position coaches. So you'll have him and Jeep Christ, who's a former 49ers offensive coordinator. You might remember Jeep Christ was one of the originators, putting in a lot of the plays that you now see the Ravens and others running on Sundays. They said it wasn't going to be an offense that would click and stick around in the NFL. And now you see a lot of people running an offense that looks a lot like what Jeep Christ and the 49ers were doing, in the past. There were over 100 years of experience, NFL coaching and playing experience, out of the guys that were the coaching staff for the Hub workout that was hosted last month in October. So you go there right now. Players or agents can sign up their guys. They'll be vetting players really in the next, week to 10 days at the most. They'd like to get kind of the invites out to the kids, by November 1st. But a unique opportunity. It's run and developed by Don Yee. And if you don't know who that is, it's Tom Brady's agent. If you need any more information past that, well, you just don't know what you're talking about. But then you look at the other people behind the scenes, and our good friend Tom, who, ran the arena, helped run the Arena Football League, helped run the Philadelphia Soul, where him and David Turner were kind of going back and forth for championships for a couple of years. And then Jamie, who's working the business side behind the scenes for them, has been part of the NFL Network. So you have people that know the business. They know what they're doing. They had 4 NFL teams out there live last month. They'll have equal or more of that out there, in November. And it's a unique opportunity, to not just do combine drills like you normally get at a workout, but instead of that, you're getting positional drills. You're getting actual coaching from guys that know what teams are looking for. And you should walk away from that day with a better idea of what you need to do in order to improve your game and have an opportunity to get signed. And an exciting part at the end was Nick Novak, former NFL and, very successful kicker, is now starting to work with the next guys. And he had a who's who of kickers and punters out there that you've seen, in the NCAA, in the NFL and XFL, and even overseas, and starting to get looks and opportunities because potentially, he told me, his best client is a kid that was born and raised in Japan who's now working with him for the next 2 to 3 months. So exciting things going on out there. Again, what are we talking about? An ever-changing business. Teams looking for opportunities to find a way to look at guys without bringing people into their complex. Stuff like this, the Spring League, what they're doing out there with the little, in the Hall of Fame, hosting guys at running back and O-line and D-line. This could be the new trend here, but the one thing these guys have going for them right now is the connections to the NFL are legitimate. And I think the opportunity to see a roster of tryout guys that you would not have seen on a regular basis before, that's what I'm most looking forward to, is when they release the roster for what this could look like, next month. You could have 40 to 60 guys that have, played in the NFL, been free agents, played and had success on film at the NCAA level. And the good thing you're going to know is everyone has to have done the pre-COVID quarantining and kind of all their methods ahead of time. You get tested the day of the event. So when the NFL gets those results, not only are you getting qualified information, you also know that all the kids that are attending are at that point COVID free. And that's, I think, kind of be huge. Down the stretch, if teams need players, that's going to be one of the biggest things to overcome, is making sure you're not bringing something into your building when you're having a hard enough time keeping it out.
Yeah, and the roster is going to look very good. I mean, we've been privileged to get a sneak peek of some of the behind-the-scenes players that are confirmed or talking about attending. And if you want more information on it, if you don't know Tommy Goodhines, who does a lot of hard work behind the scenes there for Don Yee, along with Jamie, who I'm looking forward to, because, oh, by the way, NFL Draft Bible will be out in San Diego November 14th. John Murphy and myself will be broadcasting this show from San Diego, so I'm looking forward to that. And Jeep Christ, by the way, we're working on popping him onto the show here at some point next week. So stay tuned for that. But if you are looking for more information, you want to understand more what it's all about, don't sit on it because the roster is filling up. It's going to be closed for shop here soon. This event is just a couple weeks away. So feel free to reach out to us, RIC@NFLDraftBible.com. Like our friend Neil Stratton said, if you want to slide into our DMs, feel free. They're open. But hey, it's been another hour of power. Like I said, shout out to all of our guests. Again, Josh Alper at ProFootballTalk.com, Neil Stratton at InsideTheLeague.com. Of course, John Murphy down there in New Orleans representing the Toronto Argonauts. And hey, NFLDraftBible.com. If you're not subscribed, all access. What are you waiting for? Get on board, become a disciple today, unlock the magic. You'll instantly get all of our 300 plus scouting reports downloaded today. You'll get that today. We'll drop the Scout Speak book in the mail today, so you'll have it next week. You can learn about the draft prospects. You can learn about the draft process. What's better than that? Go to NFLDraftBible.com. Of course, thoughts and prayers out to the Mario Henderson and Dave T. Thomas families. We'll be back at it again tomorrow with Big Law, Lawrence Johnson, Seven Cities Shop Talk, and John Murphy and myself. Till the next time, everybody.